program instructor here at New Horizons Ireland. One of the topics that I cover in depth is PowerShell. That's what we're going to have a little look at today. We've only got an hour, so I'm going to jump straight in and get through as much as we can in the time that we have available to us. If you have any questions along the way, you can pop them into the chat, and I'll kind of glance backwards and forwards to that and see what we can, if we can answer the questions that you have. And I'll pop up my email address before we finish up as well, so you can send me an email if you have any questions afterwards. So the presentation today was titled An Introduction to PowerShell. What we're going to be doing is just maybe jumping into the middle of it a little bit. We're going to talk about PowerShell remoting, going to do some demonstrations, and we're going to see a few bits and pieces about kind of using help and some kind of simple things like that along the way. We're scheduled to finish in an hour's time, so I'm going to start and I'm going to keep going until we run out of time and we see how much we can get covered. So to start with, we need to figure out, just like anything that we do in PowerShell, what commands can we use for the tasks that we want to do. So the best way to do that is use the get command. So we say get command, and then we can use wildcards around a kind of keyword and see what comes back. So if we look for remote, we will see a few commands come back, but none of these are actually going to do what we want to do. Okay, kind of a rare situation, because if we use something like get command and we say disk, we will find that we have a lot of commandlets that return, and most of them are kind of relevant to what we would want to do. So say something like the get disk command here is in the storage module, and that will allow us to interact, get a list of the hard disks that are on the computer. And if we look then for the commands that are in the storage module, we'll see how to interact with volumes and partitions and everything else as well. Okay, so in this situation, the commands that we're looking for are not coming back when we use get command. Now, when we use get command and we find the command that we want to use, we use the get help command after that. If we can't find the command that we want, we can search the help library with wildcards as well. So if we say help and we put remote in between our wildcards like this, we'll find a few things that come back, and the ones that we're going to be interested in here is about remote. So about remote is more like an article rather than a help file in the way that we would have for individual commandlets. So if we say help about underscore remoting or a remote. Okay, and we see a nice long help file here. I'm not going to go through it all now, but the key things that we find here is that there's a command called enter PS session. If we move on, we've got exit PS session. What else have we got? We have commands that have a computer name parameter, and we have invoke command. Okay, and then we have new PS session. So what we're going to look at today is enter PS session, new PS session, invoke command. And if we scroll down to the end of our help file, we will find that we also have a little hint here to see about underscore remote underscore requirements. Okay, so if we have a look for this, we can say, I'm just going to break out of this with Control C. We can say help, paste this in here, and we'll find a nice little article here that details exactly what the requirements are for enabling PowerShell remoting. Okay, so we need to have a compatible version on the remote machines that we want to interact with. If we have 3.0 or newer, everything is going to be okay. If we have 2.0, things get a little bit more complicated. So 2.0 is the default PowerShell version for Server 2008 R2 and Windows 7. If you're using those operating systems still and you want to start working with PowerShell, the first step that I would recommend is that you upgrade to a newer version. The latest version of PowerShell that will be released with Server 2019 will be PowerShell Core or PowerShell 6, or as it was known, PowerShell 6.0. Okay, so the current production version is 5.1. That's what we'll find on Server 2016 and Windows 10. And if you're going to upgrade those Windows 7 or the Server 20 or Server 2008 or 2 machines to a newer version of PowerShell, I'd recommend going straight to 5.1 rather than going to 3.0 or 4.0 or something like that. There's no real kind of benefit in going for an older version. You're also going to require the .NET framework that's compatible with the version of PowerShell that you're upgrading to. Okay. Now, if we have newer operating systems, Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows 8.1, Server 2012, 2012 R2, and then obviously Windows 10, Server 2016, everything's going to work for us straight away. We can still upgrade older operating systems like 2012, 2012 R2, or Windows 8, Windows 8.1 to 5.1 as well. And we get some nice added bonuses for that if we do. But what we need anyway is we need those compatible versions of PowerShell. Our user permissions, so we must have local admin permissions on the machine that we're initiating the connection on every target machine. Okay, so local admin on both. Our network, what we want is we want our network profile set to private or domain. Okay, by default PowerShell gets upset when you try to enable remoting on a public network. Okay, so if we have a managed domain based network, we should be fine. By default as well, PowerShell is going to try and use Kerberos Active Directory based authentication. Okay, so we can use local credentials, but that gets into a slightly more difficult situation that we're not going to have time to go through today. Now we need to run our shell as an administrator as well. You can see I'm running as an administrator up here. To be honest, nearly everything that you're going to do that's going to require changes in PowerShell will require admin privileges, and even some of the get commands where you're gathering information will require admin privileges as well. So we're probably going to find that we're going to right click and run as an admin most of the time with PowerShell, and we just need to maybe stop and think a little bit more before we make changes rather than running at a lower level and waiting for a prompt to elevate. So if we run our remote sessions with our default logged in credentials, we must be local admin on our machine and on our target machine, but that doesn't mean that we have to be local admin with our logged on account. We can use the credential parameter, which we'll see in a little while, to elevate our permissions during remote sessions. Okay. We've got a little bit here on configuring the computer for remoting. So the idea with this is that we must have the WinRM service running. If you have a server operating system that is 2012 or newer, WinRM is enabled by default out of the box. If you have an older server operating system, you'll have to enable that. And any client machines will need PowerShell remoting enabled before you can use it. Okay. The enable -PowerShell remoting, PS remoting, sorry, will enable everything that we need. So you can see the command here, enable -PS remoting. This will enable everything that we need. Start the WinRM service, create HTTP listeners and everything else that we need, create an exception in a firewall in order to enable our PowerShell remoting. That must be done on every machine that we intend to target through remoting. Okay. Here in our training center, we have PowerShell remoting enabled everywhere. We have a large number of computers, and every computer has 5 boots on it. So logically, that's a huge amount of machines. And the only way to really start making changes on those machines is through PowerShell remoting, unless it's something we can invoke a group policy. And sometimes we don't like to use group policy because we might be doing one-time changes for particular classes and training sessions that we have ongoing. But we have a little bit of an overview there of what's required for PowerShell remoting. So we're going to look at the commands that we can use. So the first command that we have is enter PS session. Okay, so we have this command here, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the help file for that. Okay, so we have help enter PS session. So if we press enter on this, we'll find we've got a little bit of synopsis about it, a little bit of information on the syntax that's been used, the description, and okay. and that's it. So this is like a condensed help file that we're looking at. So what we want to do is we want to use the parameter full so we can see the whole help file. And we see the same thing that we seen initially with our last command, but then we find that we have a parameter by parameter breakdown, okay? Exactly what each parameter can do. So we can see here in PowerShell we have essentially at a core two different types of parameters. We have switched parameters, which we can see here, and we have named parameters. So a switched parameter is a parameter that turns a functionality on or off, okay? So a lot of commands will have the parameter confirm, where it'll confirm everything that you're going to do before it completes, and you have to press enter to continue and confirm, or Y and enter to confirm that you want to complete the task before it can complete, okay? The other type that we have is a named parameter. So a named parameter is any parameter that requires a value after it, okay? So this application name one here that we see takes a string value, okay? So a string is a collection of numbers or letters, okay? And if we have a look down here, we'll find we have our computer name. Computer name takes a string value. So this means that we can put in an IP address or we can put in the computer name, okay? If we're doing it using Active Directories authentication using the Kerberos service, we must use computer names rather than IP addresses because that's how Kerberos is working, okay? If we're dealing with machines that are in a work group, it actually sometimes works out better to use the IP address rather than the name. So we have our computer name there. We'll just carry on through some of the parameters here. We have our credential here, which takes an input of a type PS credential. We'll see a little bit of that in a little while. So this means that if we use the credential parameter, we can run our command under a different username. So the ID here takes a value of int32. So the idea with this is that this is an integer value, okay? So it takes a numeral input. It won't allow any letters to the input. It'll generate an error. And then if we have a look a little bit beyond this, there's a lot of parameters here. I'm obviously not going to go through them all at the moment because we don't have time. One of the interesting ones is the VM name here. So the VM name will allow us to create a remote PowerShell session to a virtual machine that is running within Hyper-V on this computer, and you don't have to have any network connection between that virtual machine and your host machine. It connects through the actual VM bus. Okay, that's a nice new feature that was brought out for Server 2016 for Hyper-V. There's a lot of requirements around it. We must have a Generation 2 virtual machine. Our host operating system must be Windows 10 or Server 2012 or newer. Okay, so a few limitations on that. If we have a look here, then we have some examples. So we have enter PS session, enter PS session computer. We'll have a look at this now. So if we say enter PS session, and I'll say computer name is C16-00. It takes a moment for the connection to be established. So at the moment we have what's called mutual authentication that's going on. So our computer is making sure that the remote machine we're connecting to is the machine that we want to connect to, and the remote machine is making sure that this computer that we're connecting to is an authenticated machine and user. So we seem to have an issue here. C16-00. Okay, so that machine is offline. So we'll use 03. Okay, so we got a machine that's online here. So let's run our command again to 03. And when we use the enter PS session, it creates a remote session using the current logged on user, unless we include credentials for a different username. And we can see the prompt has changed here. And this means now that any command that we run is running on that remote machine C16-03. Okay, so if we just do a nice simple thing, there's an environmental variable that stores the name of your computer. So env computer name, and we can see the computer name comes back as C16-03. And if we run, say, get disk, oh, it's going to error out on us. Just wait for the error to pop up, and then we run it again without the hash symbol at the end. There we go. And there we go. We can see that we have 2 disks here. So we exit this session. Now, once we exit this session, it tears down the session completely. And if we want to remote that machine again, it'll establish a new session. So that can be a bit, can cause a bit of overhead on our network, an unnecessary overhead if we keep establishing sessions and tearing them down. So we will look at how to create a persistent session that we can move in and out of without having to close it off. So if we run get disk here, we can see we get different list of disks back. And if we say $env computer name, the computer name comes back as M1 rather than C16-03. Okay. So that's a kind of a simple little thing that we can do. Enter PS session, exit PS session. Anything when we're in that PowerShell session, any commands that we run will run on the remote machine just like they run on our local machine. Okay. Now, if we want to create a persistent session to that remote machine that we can move in and out of, we can say new PS session. Okay. Computer name is C16-03. And what will happen here is it creates the session in the background, but we can see our prompt doesn't change here the way it did previously. Okay, we're still running on our local machine. So if we want to connect this session that we've established, we can use enter PS session, ID is 3, which we can see here. And then if we press enter on this, you can see our prompt changes here. Now we're in the remote machine, and you can see how quickly that occurred as well because the session is already established. So we're just connecting to an established session. We can exit this, and then if we say get PS session, we can see that that session is still running in the background. Now, if we look at the help file for new PS session, which we just used, we will see that computer name here says it takes a string value. But the difference here is that we have these 2 square brackets afterwards. Okay, so when we're reading a help file in PowerShell and we see 2 square brackets like that, what that means is that we can feed multiple values into this parameter just separated by commas. And PowerShell will deal with them without us having to add any additional logic. So let's have a look at that. We say new PS session, computer name, we'll say C16-04, comma C16-05. Okay. Okay, so there we go. We've got session ID 4 and 5. So it just dealt with that command exactly the same way as it dealt with the command when we had a single machine. Okay. So now once we have these sessions, we can use our enter PS session, and we can say enter PS session, ID is 4, and we'll connect to this C16-04. We can see it changes here, and we can go into ID number 5 if we want, and we still have our session open to C16-03 as well. So if we say get PS session, we can find that we have our 3 machines here. Now, when we have our sessions like this, what we can do is we can create a variable. Okay, so everything that happens in PowerShell is happening within memory. It's within our RAM. And if we want to call some of that back, we have to give that location in memory a name. So if we say $computers equals get PS session. Okay, so the results of the get PS session command now is stored in this variable. And if we say $computers, we can see it brings back the list of remote sessions. Okay. Now, the other command that we can use for remoting, so we said we had the enter PS session, we had the new PS session. Everything that we've seen so far will only allow us to interact with a single machine at a time. Okay. If we want to interact with multiple remote machines at the same time, the command that we're going to use is Invoke Command. So we say Invoke Command, we can say computer name, and we'll use C16-03, and then we need to use the script block command. And the idea with the script block is that we create a pair of curly brackets like this, and any command that we run within those brackets will run against the remote machine. So what we can do here is we can say we'll use our get disk command. Now what's happening here is, even though we have a remote session open to this machine, it's actually establishing a new session because we've used the computer name parameter, so we haven't told the PowerShell to use the existing session. So this has opened another session in parallel, and we can open tens or even hundreds of sessions in parallel to computers using PowerShell. It doesn't have the same overheads as remote desktop services would have. So we can see our results coming back here. So what we're going to do is, we have all of our sessions saved here in $computers. So we'll say Invoke Command, and we'll use the session parameter instead of computer names. And our session is $computers. And our script block, we'll just use the get disk command again. And what's going to happen here is the command is going to run on all 3 computers. Okay, so we can see here, now if we scroll across, we can see the computer names that the results are coming back from. Okay. If we want to, we can send commands to individual computers. So we could say $S4 for station 4 equals get PS session. ID is 4. So that's going to pull back this session here. And then we can use our invoke command again. But instead of using $computers, we're going to use $S4. And we run the command now, and it only runs against C16-04 rather than against all 3 commands. Okay, so we have a lot of options in terms of what we can do with our remote sessions in this way. So just give me one moment. Just want to make sure. Okay, no questions coming in there, so that's fine. Just want to make sure I'm not missing out on anything for you guys. So the nice thing that we can do when we have a little bit of understanding of something like this is, if we open up our integrated scripting environment, the PowerShell ISE, we can build on what we've just seen there. So what we can do is we'll create a new variable called $script block. Oh, we need to put our equal sign in here so that PowerShell knows we're creating a variable. And we'll open and close our brackets on separate lines. And then in the middle here, we use the tab just to step in and just kind of keep our code nice and neat. And we'll say get process, and we'll select. So when we use the get process command, it gets all of the running processes either on the local machine, or in the situation here where we're going to send it using the invoke command on the remote computers. So we'll select We'll use the select object, and we want the first one. Okay, so we're just going to bring back the first process in the list of the running processes, and then we can have get service. We'll do the same thing with this. Select object and use the first, and we just get the first service from the list as well. So the idea with this is I'm using, usually you can just use the keyword select, but I want to kind of use a nice syntax because we're putting it in a script. Usually when we're writing a script, we're going to keep it. It's nice to use full syntax, not to use, we have what's called aliases in PowerShell, where we can create short names for commands that we're using. And there's built-in aliases. If we actually run the get alias command, we can see these are all the short names for the commands that exist, all the short names for commands that exist in PowerShell by default. Okay, and if we create any new ones of our own, we will see that they'll be added to the list here as well. Okay, but the idea is when we're using aliases is to keep them to the shell. Okay, so when we're working in the shell like this, it's no problem using aliases. You're going to run the command, you're going to press enter, you're going to close that shell when you're finished, and you're never going to see what you've done again. If we're writing a script, we're going to come back to it in the future. Could be a week's time, 6 months time, 2 years time, and if we have a load of little short truncated names using aliases and things like that, it can get a little bit difficult to keep track of what it was that we're trying to do, and it's that little bit harder to read back through the code that you've created before. So if we have a look, we ran this command here, invoke command, session, computers, etc. And we just put the number 0 in there, it just brings back 0. Now what we could do, actually we want the computer name, we want this one. Okay, so what we can do here is PowerShell has aliases for commands. So ICM is the alias for invoke-command. Okay, the first parameter, computer name, here is what we call a positional parameter. So if you don't include -computer name, PowerShell presumes that the value that you put in here is destined for -computer name. And then the same thing, script block is a positional parameter. So we create our script block like this, 0. And you can see the difference between the top line and the bottom line. Both lines do the exact same thing, but one of them is much shorter than the other. This here is perfectly fine to use in the shell. It's very nice, very quick. But if we're going to create a script, we should be using the full length syntax. And when I'm teaching, I always try and use full length syntax as well, because it reads a little bit better and it's a little bit more intuitive and makes more sense. If you have no idea what the alias for invoke command is, the first thing you're going to do when you see this is in a script is start Googling what is ICM or looking through the get alias output to see what the heck it is that somebody is trying to do. But if we have our script block here, we have our get process, get service. Just to see that locally here, we say get process, brings back a list of all the processes that are available on the machine. And we can have our get service, brings back all our services. And what we're doing is we've decided to filter this. So we're only going to bring back the first entry from the list. Okay, and the first entry from this list as well. All right, and we're going to do that on our remote computers. So the really nice thing about PowerShell remoting is when we have a script block like this, we can put as many lines in here between those sets of brackets as we like, and all those lines of code will run against a remote machine. So we can say invoke command, computer name is, we'll use that C16-03 again, and then our script block, instead of putting our brackets here with our commands in it, what we do is we just call back this variable that we've created up here. So we say no brackets, just $ script block. Okay, and so when we have some lines of code here in our integrated scripting environment, we can highlight it like this if we want, and we can click this button and it will run the highlighted lines. Or if we click this button here, it will run everything that's contained in the script plain. Okay, so if we run this, and there we go, we see that this is our process that comes back here, and this is our services coming back here. Okay, so this is what we're trying to do here. Now, we probably wouldn't want to hard code the computer name in like this. So what we might do is we might use something like get AD computer, or not AD computer, AD group member identity, and we can put the name of a group from our Active Directory in here, and it'll pull back all of the computers in that group. So we've got a group called Conair 2016 because we've got a room that's named O'Connor here, and that's what this C16 means. It's running Office 2016, and it's in the room O'Connor, and this is station number 3. So this will bring back all of the machines in that group. So if we select run here, we can see all of the computers that are in that group come back. Okay. Now the get AD group member, this command is not built into PowerShell. Okay, so PowerShell is a modular environment, and that means that we can add in functionality as we like. So if we want to see our modules, we can say get module, and it will bring back a list of the modules that are available on our computer. Now this is a very short list here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, this is not all of the modules that are available on the computer. This is all the modules that we have used within this current shell that we have open. So if we want to see everything that's available, we can say get module list available. Okay, that takes a few minutes or a few seconds longer to run. Okay, so we'll just give that a second to complete, and there we go. Okay, large list of modules that are available to us on this computer. As you can see, I've been doing a lot with Microsoft Azure here, so we have all the various Azure modules that are available and installed at the moment. So we have our get AD group member identity, but when we run this, we can see that it brings back output like this. Okay, now if we try and pass this output to the computer name parameter, we're going to get an error, because all that we want to bring back from that command, if we run it again here, all we want to bring back from this output is just this value here, the actual name of the computer. Okay, now the reason why we see so much output is that when we run a command in PowerShell, it brings back what we call an object. Okay, I'm not going to get too deep into kind of more developer side terminology, but the idea with an object is that it brings back a list of information. Okay, so if we say dir in a command shell, it will bring back quite similar output to what we see here. Okay, but when we run the dir command in PowerShell, it's actually bringing back a lot more information. Okay, so if we say dir c:/, okay, we see output like this. But if we take that output and we use the pipe, and the pipe here is when we take the output of one command and we push it into another command, and we say get member. Okay, and the get member command here will show us what type of object we get back. Okay, and we can see here that it's a system.io.directory info. Okay, so this is coming from the .NET layer underneath PowerShell. And the way I like to explain objects to people a lot of the time that are working with PowerShell are coming more from an infrastructure background than a development background. So what I like to say about an object is an instance of what we call a class, and then that just kind of moves the problem up. You go, okay, so I kind of know what an object is now. It's an instance of a class. So what is a class? The easy way that I find to explain this is if you were to say join a new company, you turn up in the HR office on your first morning and the nice lady gives you a form to fill in, okay? So that form is your class. When you fill in all of the details on it, that becomes an object because that's a representation of you, okay? So when you run the dir command, what happens is PowerShell looks at the system.io.directory info class like it's a form, and it fills out the details for each directory and file that exists within that within the C:\/ the root of our drive. So if we want to see, now we look at the list here, we can see that we have methods, okay? So our methods here are little tasks that we can do with the objects that come back. Don't worry about them too much for now. What we also have is properties, okay? So the properties, the way the properties work is the properties have a name. So the property's name is, in this case, is name, and then they have values. So chocolatey, log, Microsoft, program files, etc., etc. These are all the values of the property name, okay? And if we want to see all the information that comes back, instead of piping our command into get member, we can type it into select object, and we can say property. Now what we could do is we can select which properties come back. So we can say just bring back the property name, and it will just bring back the names, okay? And we could say, what other properties have we got here? Mode. So we could say, do you know what, let's bring back the property name and the property mode, okay? And then it brings back the name and the mode. And we want to see the values of all the properties. What we can do is, instead of putting a named value there for property, we can just use a wildcard. We use our asterisk, we press enter, and we can see that for each directory object that we have, it's bringing back all of this information for us, okay? So we don't need to get caught up too much in that at the moment, but we just need to be aware that everything works this way in PowerShell. So PowerShell is what we call an object-based environment. Your old CMD prompt that you're probably more familiar with is a string-based environment. This is object-based. Everything that you do more or less brings back an object. So if we look at our getAD group member, we run that, and we can see what's happening is it's bringing back an object for each computer, all right? And all we want is the value for name. So what we can do is we can take that command and we can pipe it into select object, and we'll say the property that we want is name. Okay, and now if we run this line, we will find it just brings back a list of names. Okay, now the problem with this is it brings back a list of names, but it also puts this little header here. Okay, and this little header here will still break things when we try and pass it to computer name here. So what we'll do is, instead of using property here, we will use expand property name. And now when we run this line, we can see we get our list, and it's only bringing back the value of name. It's not also putting the header name on it, okay? And that makes a difference when we try and pass it here. So now that we have this bit working, what we can do is we can say $CN for computer name equals our list of computer names. So now when we run this command, we don't see any output because we've stored it in the variable, but when we call our variable back, we can see our list of names here. So now all we need to do is pass this variable to the computer name parameter here. So we can say $CN, and now if we run our command, it will try and run against all of the computers in this list. Now I know for a fact that not all of these computers are powered on, and that means that it will cause an error for every machine that's not switched on. So what I'm going to do is add in this command here, error action, and I'm going to say silently continue, okay, so that it doesn't show us a list of errors for the machines that are turned off. So we can put this in and we click on this, and then here we go. So it looks like These are the only machines that are actually turned on in the room. And guys, don't forget, if you have any questions here, just pop them into the chat if there's anything that you want to ask me. Okay, so that's that complete, and we can see that we didn't get any errors. So let's remove the error action and run the command again, just to prove that that would happen. So we get the 3 online machines are working again, and then we get a few errors back for the other computers in the list. So what we'll find, there we go, there's all our errors. So we can see 07, 01, 12, 02, etc., 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 etc. So the really nice thing about learning how this works with the script block and the invoke command is that we can put anything essentially that works on our local machine will work within this script block against whatever list of computers you have here. Okay, which is a really, really nice thing. So we have some quite handy commands that we can run on a computer. We can say get event log. So we say get event log. Log name is, let's look at the system log. Not computer name. We want entry type is, yeah, we'll have all the errors, and we will say the newest 40. So we get the 40 new errors in our system event log. We press enter, and there we go there. Okay, nice, quick, easy way to pull back our events. Okay, if we put our argument list silently. Oh, not argument list, sorry. Error action, silently continue. And then what we'll do is we'll delete these 2 lines out of here, and instead we're going to put in here get event log. Get event log. Log name is system. Entry type is error, and we can say error comma warning as well if we want, and then we can get our newest 40. Okay, so if we do this and run our command, we can see all of our errors and our warnings that are occurring on our computers, and it even tells us here the name of the computer that the error or warning has occurred on. Okay, nice simple little thing. Now when we're running that get event log command, we will find that it has the computer name parameter. Okay, and the strange little thing with PowerShell is a lot of these commands that include the computer name parameter, they don't actually use the WinRM service that's used for PowerShell remoting. They use the ports and the services, in this case, that the event log uses for remote management. And what that can mean is that while you might have PowerShell remoting access to a computer, when you try to run this command, get event log computer name, it'll fail, and you'll get this decom or PC error. That's probably something that people have seen before. We also have the restart dash computer, and we have the stop dash computer command. So they do what it says on the tin. It's a restart and stop. And with these we have the computer name parameter as well. But once again, these commands do not run under the PowerShell remoting WinRM service. They run under their own proprietary services. So it can mean in that situation that if we're using these decom RPC's remote procedure call settings, we might not have all the ports open in our firewall. We might not want all the ports open for everything that we need to access. So if we do find a situation where the computer name doesn't work, or we want to lock down our environment and start closing some more ports, we can just leave that WinRM service running and then run these commands within our script block. Okay. We can also interact with the registry through PowerShell, so we can shut off remote registry access in the firewall as well if we'd like to do that, make the system more secure as well. So we have a look at a couple of other handy little commands that we have. We have get net firewall. We can see it showing up in the list here. Get net firewall rule. So if we run it like this, it's going to bring back every firewall rule that's on this computer. We press enter on that, and we can see all of the firewall rules that are set on the computer. Okay, we can say get net enabled. Okay, this will only bring back the ones that, you say enabled $true. Okay, this brings back all of the rules that are enabled, and we can set that to false. Okay, so that's grand. We can see our rules, and we can see which ones are enabled and which ones are disabled. Can take a bit of scrolling to go through all of that though. So what we might like to do is get our firewall rule, and we'll say where the display name is, and let's just put it in wildcards, and we can say file print. We just put our wildcards in anywhere where we think there might be new other values that have to go in, and we press enter on this, and we say, see the display name, file and print sharing, MB session in, MB session out, SMB in, SMB out. And when we see these lists that come back, assuming that these were all like say we have our echo request here, ICMP. So let's see if we can just filter it by the echo requests. So let's say we want file and print ICMP, and what we'll do is we'll say select object, and we'll only bring back display name. We want to see the profile because we want to know if it's the private, public, or domain profile, and enabled. Okay, and here we go. We can see it like this. Okay, so now we can see all of our ICMP requests, whether they're enabled or disabled. So once we've figured out this is the list of firewall rules we want to work with, then what we can do is we delete out the select object. That's not important anymore, and we pass it into the disable net firewall rule. Okay, and then for anybody who doesn't know, ICMP is the protocol that's used for our ping requests. Okay, so at the moment, ping requests are enabled on all profiles for IPv6 and IPv4 on this computer. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to disable all of those rules. Okay, and now we bring up our command again. We can see instead of everything enabled being true, everything is false. Okay, as simple as that to open and close ports in the firewall for those default rules. Okay, so we can bring this up again, and instead of disable, we'll use enable. And there we go. Bring the command back up, and everything is enabled again. Okay, so once we have that rule existing there in our firewall, we can enable and disable it at will using PowerShell. And anytime we want, we can pull this command from here, and we can put it into a script block like this and run it against a number of remote machines. Okay, and this list of machines here is as big as you want to get it. You just have to figure out if you want to use your Active Directory queries like this to pull lists of computer names from your Active Directory based on group membership. There's a lot of different ways we can query Active Directory. We can pull all of the computers from an OU or from a group, or we can even maybe use some wildcards to get computers that have the same set of characters in their name maybe. So to show you that quickly, we could say get AD computer, and we'll say filter, and our filter goes in a script block like the script block that we send in our invoke command, and we filter where the name is like, and we'll say C16 dash, we put a wildcard in there. This needs to be in quotes like that, and we press enter. It takes a minute to run, and there you go. We can see all of these computers in this list have C16 in their name. All right. If we run that command again, we can use our select object, and we just want to bring back the name. Okay, and there you go. You can see it's all filtered like this, C16. What we could do with that is we can change it, and we can say, do you know what, rather than C16 dash, we want everything that has 16 dash, and we'll put another wildcard on this side. And we press enter on that, and we see we've got L16, M16, B16, S16, okay, Y16, J16, okay, and everything that has 16 with a hyphen in it here will come back, because that's what we've searched for here. Okay, really nice way to do things. If we have a look, if we say get AD computer, and we'll say we want one with the identity of C16-03 that we used earlier on. This brings back this computer here, but if we look at the distinguished name, this shows us from this point here the OU. If we take this path, this shows us the OU that this computer lives in. So we can copy this, okay, and we can say get AD computer filter, and we say filter star, and this means that if we just run it like this, it'll bring back every computer in our Active Directory. But what we're going to use is search base, and then what we paste in here within quotes is that path that we just copied from here. Okay, the OU O'Connor, which is in the OU classroom computers, which is in the OU training computers, which is in the domain that's nhtraining.local, okay, which is the training environment that we have here. And we press enter, and that brings back every computer from that OU. And then we can take that and we can pipe it into our select object name, and we just bring back a list of names like that. There we go. Okay, so quite handy little things. Definitely worth looking at the commands for Active Directory. If you're doing anything that's remotely kind of time consuming or heavy work in Active Directory, it'll really make life a lot easier for you. And if we want to see all of the commands that are available in Active Directories, we can say get command, and we can set the module name is Active Directory like that. Okay, we press enter on that, and this brings back a list of every command that's available in our Active Directory. All right. Now the way PowerShell works is they have the verb noun. Okay, so the verb is the task you want to do, which is add, and then the noun is what you want to run that task on. So because we understand that it's a verb noun set up like that, what we can do is we can bring that command back up, get command module Active Directory, and we can say basically where the verb is get, and now it will just show us all the get commands from the Active Directory. Okay, or maybe we want to deal with users, so we can say where the noun is AD user, and now we see all the commands for users. Change that to where the noun is AD computers, AD computer, and it brings back the commands for computer, and so on and so forth. And we can use this for any module. So we could say get command module is storage, and the verb is, or the noun is disk, and there you go. Brings back all of the commands related to disk. Or maybe we want to work with our volumes, so we can say the noun VOLUME volume, just like that. Okay, so We're just about out of time, guys. We got 6 minutes left, 0 questions. So what we'll do is I'm just going to put my email address up here. david.senior@nhireland.ie. Okay. So if anybody has any questions in the future, you want to get in touch, feel free to pop me over an email, and I'm happy to help out with anything that I can. Okay. So I think we'll leave it there. Hopefully you found something that was interesting for you here. If you do want to do kind of PowerShell training with us, the Introduction to PowerShell course is a 5-day official course from Microsoft. Okay, so can't really do justice to it in an hour here. And then the Advanced course is a 3-day course from Microsoft, official course as well. And we'll also find that if you're doing something like Office 365, Microsoft Azure, the Server 2016 course, even Windows 10 and a bit in Windows 12, everything contains PowerShell. Courses like the Exchange courses and the Advanced Exchange course contains a massive amount of PowerShell as well. It's definitely where Microsoft are trying to push things for the future. They're trying to develop PowerShell for everything that they do. Even some of the aspects, some of the nicer bits and pieces that were made available for Hyper-V for Server 2016 require a decent bit of PowerShell skills in order to be able to access them properly, even just simple things like enabling nested virtualization. But yeah, feel free to contact us if we can help you out with anything else, guys. And as I said, hopefully you've learned something that was useful for you today. And thanks for attending. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.